Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. The Zanu PF factional war is hotting up. Let me say this from the outset. This factional war has got nothing to do with the real big problems the nation is facing. Zimbabwe is a failed state. Its economy is all but collapsed. Basic services such as healthcare and education have all but collapsed. There's no clean running water, even in the urban centers. Power cuts are the norm. The country is in serious economic problem. And with those economic problems comes the social problems. With unemployment being 80% plus for the last 20 years, one can only imagine the suffering of the people and the stress is putting on the national social fabric. So this Zanu PF factional war, it's actually a diversion from what the nation should be concentrating on. But when you've got a dictatorship, the dictatorship sets the agenda. And so the nation is involved in the Zanu PF factional war. And that is taking center stage. And while the factional war holds up, the nation has no choice but to sit back and helplessly watch what's going to happen next. Here is a recent video that has been circulating on the social media of one of the war veteran leaders who had tried to organize a press conference but was disrupted by Zanu PF thugs, no doubt from the other faction. You can listen to what he had to say and watch what actually happened.
Someone must go. He will go. Yes. It doesn't matter about the time. Yes. Our struggle was never overnight. Yes. It was not overnight. Yes. But eventually we won. We are all veterans. I did today in Assault Shadi.
Well, the war veteran who lost his cap there he was lucky. He only lost a cap. It could have been a lot worse. As the factional war heats up, we know that in the past, the war veterans, although they've been treated again and again with kid gloves, make no mistake about it, if he was from the opposition, I think we know that a lot worse things would have happened. But even the war veterans themselves, when the war veterans challenged Mugabe in the dying days of his regime, as the factional war in the party was hotting up, the regime did unleash the riot police armed with batons, tear gas, and water cannons. And the war veterans were shocked. They never believed that they would be treated thus, given that they were the backbone of the Zanu PF party. They are the ones who had kept Mugabe and Zanu PF in power for those years. This could still happen in the current situation. It is interesting to note that the other faction, one faction is the Mnangagwa faction, the other one is his VP. He is now portraying himself as a champion fighting to end corruption. Here is the latest video of him speaking on corruption.
Nyika inodzivirirwa nevene vayo, ilizwe lifikirwe ngevanikazi valo. No one is going to come and defend our country except ourselves. A loud and clear no to corruption by whomsoever. Corruption aborts our quest for sustainable economic development, peace and stability. Our struggle for independence was founded on the values of unity and love. These are timeless and ageless values which we must.
Sure thing. For those who are not familiar with the man, this is General Chiwenga. In the late afternoon of this Mugabe regime, he was the man who spearheaded the 2017 military coup. He now wants to portray himself as a champion of democracy, the one fighting corruption. It's all nonsense, of course. This individual is filthy rich. Make no mistake about that. He has got mansions, he has got farms, he's got business interests, he's got a fleet of posh cars. And when he was going through one of his divorces with one of his wives, I think he's now on his third wife, it emerged that he had 45 gold watches. And anyone who believes that he bought all that using his commander's salary is naive. He is not a Democrat. Weeks before the 2017 coup, he was holding the Constitution, claiming that the army was going to fight for the Constitution, for upholding the Constitution. He staged the coup a few weeks later. And we were supposed to believe that that was in defense of the Constitution. Nonsense. There is no way in the Constitution where it says a coup is justified, legal, and constitutional. And when he completed the coup, he was duly rewarded by being given the position of vice president. And a number of his fellow top brass in the army who were involved in the coup were themselves rewarded with top positions in the new government. As VP, as vice president, he had to run in the 2018 elections to campaign for Zanu PF's victory, and again into 2023. Here he is speaking at one of the rallies in Kwekwe. In which he made it very clear that Zanu PF would crush the opposition like lice. We can listen to him speaking.
Constantino Chiwenga has issued a terrifying warning to the Citizens Coalition for Change, CCC, and its leader Nelson Chamisa, saying Zanu PF would crush the party like lice. Lice are tiny wingless parasitic insects that feed on human blood. Addressing a Zanu PF rally at Mbizo Stadium in Kwekwe Saturday, the former army commander likened the ruling party to the biblical Philistine giant Goliath, which would have no problem crushing the opposition. He belittled the CCC, describing it as a small, insignificant party. His statements come at the same time as CCC supporters were being tear-gassed by police to prevent Chamisa from holding a campaign rally at Kwekwe Center. I have heard others here saying down with Triple C. Let me assure you that there is nothing that it can achieve. You see how we crush lice with a stone, Chiwenga said. You put it on a flat stone and then flatten it to the extent that even flies will not make a meal out of it. That is what we are going to do.
One is going to accept that that is not someone who believes in democracy. The important point here is that people of Zimbabwe are being presented with a choice of Mnangagwa or Chiwenga. I believe that is a false choice. That is not different from a mouse being presented with a choice of a black mamba or a cobra. It is a false choice because the mouse knows that either snake will make a meal of it. In the case of Zimbabwe, we were presented with a similar false choice in 2017 when Zanu PF was going through one of its factional wars. People thought the choice was removing Mugabe and replace him with Mnangagwa. And the people came out in support of the military coup because it removed Mugabe. But that did not change our situation. Hence the reason why the country is still a failed state today. Because all we did was remove one dictator and only to replace him with another. And it is my view that the present situation is no better. We can pretend all we like that the present situation will improve things. Replacing Mnangagwa with Chiwenga will change things. The truth of the matter is it will not change anything. We are only repeating the same mistake we made in 2017. The real challenge here is whether or not the people of Zimbabwe have learned from the past and are now smart enough to realize that they are being given a false choice. They're smart enough to say no to Mnangagwa and no to Chiwenga. Because either one of them would not solve the country's problems, no more than the mouse picking the cobra or the black mamba. What we need is to think outside the box, is to reject the two and say, no, we don't want that. We don't want one dictator replacing another. We want to remove and end the dictatorship itself. One of the biggest problems we have had in Zimbabwe is getting our our friends in the war veterans to understand that reality. That has been very difficult. The war veterans have been brainwashed into believing that the only party that can rule Zimbabwe is Zanu PF. As much as the war veterans fought hard to remove Mugabe, they cannot deny they also immediately replaced him with Mnangagwa. To them, that was perfectly okay. And I'm not saying all of them, but some of them are fighting to replace Mnangagwa with Chiwenga. I don't think they truly realize that this is actually no solution at all. That is where our problem lies. But that is only part of the problem. The real problem here is that we've got a political system that for the last 45 years has given the veto to a select few. There's no doubt that Zimbabweans have gone to the polls to vote, but that their vote is not really counted because Zanu PF has been able to rig elections. And the war veterans have played this pivotal role in helping Zanu PF rig elections. Their role was even amplified in 2008, when in the March vote, the nearest the country had ever got to a free, fair, and credible process, Mnangagwa stepped in, backed by the Joint Operations Command, to stop ZEC declaring the results. And then they went on to spend the next 6 weeks counting 5 million votes, with the end result that Tsvangirai's 73% of the vote was whittled down to 47%. And that allowed the runoff. Mnangagwa boasted about his role in the, in the runoff of the 2008 elections. And the war veterans, at that point, led by Jabulani Sibanda, played a pivotal role. Here is Mnangagwa boasting about his role, and towards the end of the video, you will also see Jabulani Sibanda speaking.
2008 patakaita ma-elections pakaposa papinda Tsvangirai ndandiri election agent ya president. Ma-results abuda tiri party headquarters vamutasa vanga vari secretary vedu ve-administration vamutasa muripi yafona ndiri kwarusapi komogwenda kwarusapi seka ma-results achibuda kudai vanga aiwa zvako izvo Mnangagwa ndezvako endaenda kumusha ofisi vanga vabisa zvinhu zvavo zvose watofunga kuti zani yadini yaparara. President ofona zvakamira sei kati ndomamira zvakaita takatodini kateda sei manje mama ndikati abvudzai baba nditaurira baba gadzirai politburo cabinet musarangarira zvimwe zvinhu gadzirai chi cabinet asi nangoda kuti muzive kuti 2008 ma-results abuda vamutasa vakatiza.
As a country we face a generational transition. Vana vesa vari kuma below 35, they are crying out for help. The country is in a mess. Arusuru, we know we are inheriting a mess. We know this country has been left with nothing.
I'm assuring you that starting from tomorrow, you'll see a different nation from what you have seen or read on the news about these results and everything. Where we are going ahead there, the situation will be very different. What we said to our people, they could not see with their own eyes. We are going to act as we see it fit. We are prepared to go the whole distance.
No
Many people were murdered in cold blood that year. Over 500. And millions were internally displaced. Hundreds of thousands were beaten, raped, or had their properties destroyed. The war veterans have played a significant role in the creation and imposition of the Zanu PF dictatorship. It is of little help for them to be fighting to remove Mnangagwa, but only to replace him with another dictator, Chiwenga. We have been down this road before. We don't want to keep repeating it. The message that must be sent to the war veterans is that the system itself has failed. They have got to accept that a system that says they, because they fought in the war, have the divine right to veto who governs the country is at the heart of our failed political system. And we must change that. And I think the people of Zimbabwe themselves must also wake up to the reality that the system has failed and they cannot accept the choice that is being given before them, either Mnangagwa or Chiwenga. That is a false choice. We can't keep on repeating the same mistake. 45 years after independence, we cannot continue to have these meaningless elections and pretend that we will get the change we want. We'll never get the change we want. This is a failed system. And I think we must be smart enough to accept that it is a failed system and to finally end it. We don't want Mnangagwa, but neither do we want Chiwenga. Because we know Mnangagwa is a tyrant, a dictator, but we also know that Chiwenga is corrupt and a dictator, as much a dictator himself as Mnangagwa. Why should we have to go through to repeat what happened ever since the 2017 military coup? At the time, people were warned that supporting the coup, when its objective is to replace Mugabe with Mnangagwa, was a false choice. But people did not listen. I seriously hope that people will listen this time. And my last message to our war veteran friends is that they should accept that the system has failed. They should accept that seeking to replace Mnangagwa with Chiwenga is not the solution. We are just going round and round in circles. The war veterans must accept that the political system that has denied ordinary Zimbabweans a meaningful say in the governance of the country and given them the veto on who can rule the country is at the heart of our failed political system. The right to a meaningful vote should be extended to all Zimbabweans. No one should be above the law. No one should have a veto. If they are genuinely fighting for change, the war veterans must accept that we want meaningful reforms. That Chiwenga should not be the president just because that is the candidate they want. He must go through an election process, free, fair, and credible. If he wins, good luck. The idea that they can just impose Chiwenga is an outrage. And at the present moment, that is exactly what the war veterans are fighting to achieve. Just as they replaced Mugabe with Mnangagwa in 2017. I repeat, the challenge before this nation is to accept the reality that replacing Mnangagwa with Chiwenga is a false choice. Just as it was a false choice replacing Mugabe with Mnangagwa. And the war veterans must accept their role in the imposition of, first of all, Mugabe in 1980 and throughout the 37 years of his rule, and the imposition of Mnangagwa in 2017 after the military coup. And they must realize that they cannot impose Chiwenga and thus perpetuate the dictatorship. The war veterans themselves, although they are given special privileges in the dictatorship, they must accept that the dictatorship is a failed system. And that is why we must dismantle it. Think about it.